do that I needed to find, just like working out, like, with your muscles and your endurance. You don't just go and do that one time. You don't go do a 1 week boot camp and now you're healthy and you never have to do it again. Uh, I knew that mental health and personal development at that point was going to have to be a daily thing, and
Yeah.
that's when I decided to start taking formal NLP training, and I became obsessed and was doing it nonstop. And like I said, I'm lucky because I have some of the best teachers in the world, right here. So I was able to jump into that. To finish your question, I know I digressed a bit about philosophy. I got really into non-duality. Are you familiar with that?
Um, if you introduce me to a few of the names, I might know
Well,
the camp.
um, Maharaj, I probably have his book over here. What's his name? I Am That is the book. Um, Nisargadatta Maharaj.
So is this more like Eastern philosophies?
Eastern, and so non-duality is sort of like a distilled form of what you will find in Hinduism and Buddhism.
Okay.
Buddhism and Hinduism have more cultural components to them, and they have more like, you can go to a Buddhist service, you can go to a Buddhist temple. There is no non-duality
Okay.
temple. There is no non-duality service. So it's more like this: if you distilled the exact philosophy from Buddhism and left out all the cultural components of it,
Okay.
duality. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of books out there, and a lot of teachers who claim to teach non-duality, especially here in California, which they're not really non-duality. They're more like personal development, California style,
Ah,
into non-duality. But there is a teacher by the name of John Wheeler. He's a little elusive. He has some books out there, but he happens to live in Santa Cruz as well. And
okay.
I knew who he was. I read his books before I moved here, and then when I was moving here, I was like, "Oh, great! I'm gonna look this guy up." And we kind of became friends. And then he's a little elusive. He's hard to find sometimes, but he was uh, a great teacher in non-duality. But again, I hit the same sort of problem, which was there's no real technique. Like, sure, you can dive into non-duality, you can feel one with everything, but that doesn't necessarily pay your bills,
Yeah.
really grow your business. It doesn't make your marriage that's not working start working again. So I needed real techniques and processes, and that's why I turned to NLP. But philosophy is something I could really indulge myself in, and
Yeah.
probably too much,
Yeah.
and not get a whole lot
I
done.
wonder if that's because we, as people who get into neuro linguistic programming, that get into hypnotism, because we get very involved in imagery and in creating vivid stories. And really, philosophy is the love of wisdom. You know, we're it's concepts. You're really thinking about a story and what it could mean and how it relates to humanity, and it can be as colorful and as vivid as you can imagine it, or as limited and as monotone and monochromatic as you can make it. You know, and
Well, I think we're trying to figure stuff out. I think that's what philosophers. I think our goal is probably the same, and so it's just a different way of going about it.
I guess maybe that's the appeal. I don't really know. I've just found that it seems that many of the practitioners I speak to, at least the ones who are more public, because there are a lot of practitioners that are pretty good, but they're not really putting out any content. But you're constantly putting out fresh and new content, and it's relevant. You know, it's always applicable, which I think is great. I think it's really informative and really good. But you don't see a whole lot of that, you know. But the guys who are out there doing that, it seems like there is a trend that a lot of them do dabble a bit in philosophy and just kind of I fancy it, I guess, is just the easiest word for me.
Yeah,
But
when I was talking to Steve Andreas, and he thanked me for sharing something. This was early on when he was I mean, he still mentors me, but he's not doing well in his health, unfortunately.
right,
Um, but he kept thanking me for sharing, and I said, well, why are you thanking me? Because I was sharing my experiences with him, and he said, well, not many people do. And I was like, it's true. Like, there's a lot of, not just NLPers, but a lot of NLPers too, who they're willing to go really deep into some of these things, into themselves, and really work on themselves. They're not really that willing to share. They're
Mm.
not really willing to put their stories out there, share their experiences. And then you have those people who never go deep. They stay in really shallow water, and they're overly wanting to share all of their experiences. And it's like, okay, that's, it's fine. There's no reason why they shouldn't share their experiences, but you can tell they're never really quite going deep enough. And I told him that. He's like, yeah, you're okay. You just hit that's dead on. It's actually not very common to find people who are willing to go really, really deep and also share that depth with others and really, teach it, not just teach it, but share it as an example. And, it does leave you vulnerable. I mean, I think I'm probably the only NLPer, I guess public NLPer, like you said it, who often shares my stories about being in, falling into depression, because
Hmm.
a lot of these NLPers want to make it seem like they don't have problems or they never did, like they're almost superhuman. Like for a long time, Tony Robbins never talked about his vulnerabilities, and in the last
Right.
15 years, you hear him talking about that finally. But I think there's this thing in NLP, especially the industry, and a lot of personal development and self-help, where people want to seem like they either never had a problem or they had the one big problem and then they solved it, and it's just like a movie where like the hero wins and then we all ride off into the sunset. It's like, that is complete bullshit. I just did a video
Yeah.
of Jack Conte, of the CEO of Patreon, because I was down in VidCon in Anaheim. I brought my daughter down there. It's a digital video conference, and Jack Conte was there, and he, he's enormously successful right now, but he was actually pretty much a defeated artist, and that's how he created Patreon. And
Right.
his speech was called "Nothing Works," and he talks about that, how like people give these presentations, TED Talks or whatever, and they make it sound like, here was the climax, and then they solved this major problem, and then it was all done, and they're successful, and it just goes straight up, for the rest of their lives. And he's like, even if that's true, I am so not interested in that, because that is not how my life has been, and it never will be. And I
Right.
go up, I go down, I have 10 failures, and then I have one big success. It's just, that's life. And so I'm certainly more interested in telling it the real experience, and I'm more interested in people who are willing to tell that real experience. So if somebody's coming off as if, they haven't had any major problems, they haven't never had like suffered depression or any of these things, then if you've never had to really overcome something big, then why would I listen to you? Because
Yeah.
that's
What good has NLP really been for you, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
uh,
that's good, man. I actually really appreciate you sharing that and being raw about it. As someone who was struggling, figuring out what NLP was, because I was a natural. I stumbled upon it and found it totally by accident. Was trying to write my own curriculum, and a friend of mine, who he and his wife had taken an NLP course on the way to getting married. And he looked at my curriculum. He looked at what I had written out, my formulas and stuff, and he goes, "Man, this is NLP." And I was like, "Bullshit! I don't know what NLP is, but I created this. This is awesome." And he was like, "No, this has already been done. You should really take an NLP course. I think you'd enjoy it. I think that's what you've done here." And that was my first NLP course. I was like, "Yep, okay, yeah, this has already been discovered. Somebody else already knows how to do this." And I went in looking for people that would teach this, and I found that every sensory acuity course out there, anything that I found, was really lackluster. But I found that yours was the most involved. It was application oriented. From day one, it gave you what to do, how to apply it, and every day, like I said, it focused on something new. And it was great, man. I highly encourage people to check out your stuff. It's awesome.
thank you. Yeah, I think they cut too many corners in most NLP trainings, and I think the reason for that is, the live trainings. If they're more than a week, people have a hard time taking more than a week off to go do
Right.
a training. And so then you have the ones that are spread out. You might have a weekend a month for 6 months or something like that. And then when you stretch something out like that, you also run the risk of people dropping out. So I think
Mhm.
they've really shortened NLP trainings. What they'll say is, we figured how to teach this faster, or how to program it straight into your unconscious. It's like, no, you didn't. It's like, there's no way that you can speed up the process. I mean, you can go as quickly if you practice a lot, developing sensory acuity.
Yes.
But you have to do the exercise. You can't learn it in a lecture. So when I decided to do my practitioner training, which I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get to do, but I said to myself, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do the real full-on practitioner training. And I spoke to Steve and Connie Ray Andreas. I wanted to use their material. I found everything that they've created to be the best NLP material that I've come across. And so their practitioner training, which they haven't taught, he's retired. She doesn't teach practitioner anymore.
Right.
It was based on a 24-day training. And I thought, okay, this is it. And I thought to myself, if I only find 6 people to sign up for this, that's really all I need. And so I put it out there and 6 people signed up, and we did a 24-day practitioner training. I don't think that anyone does a 24-day practitioner training anymore.
Wow.
The reason why I was insistent upon doing that was because I did not want to leave anything out. I wanted this to be the ultimate practitioner training. And then along the way, I also turned it into an online training. So we were able to capture it all and have it, nothing left behind. It's every single detail that's, you could possibly imagine that has to do with an NLP practitioner course. It's in there.
Man, that's awesome. Very cool.
It was hard doing it, and I had to, when you do those type of trainings, the great thing about teaching is that you get to learn it, deeper and deeper. And that brought me to my edge several times. And that's what I wanted out of it, because the great thing about learning is you get to teach it. And then in teaching, you get to learn it even deeper.
Sorry, my wife just came home. So. Yeah, man, I really appreciate your willingness to do this again, Damon. There was another aspect. What you are a coach, right? So that's another thing that you do. When you coach, do people that hire you as a coach, do they look for an NLP trainer coach, or are they just looking for a coach in general?
I've gotten both. I coach a surprising number of people who have never taken an NLP training but found me on YouTube. And they watched enough of my videos for whatever reason. They trust me, so they ask me for coaching. I've coached. I don't ever teach people NLP one-on-one, because I don't think that's a good use of either of our time, and I think it's kind of a waste of their money to do that. I think you need more people involved, and you think about, like, I have to count up the hours. The hours for my practitioner training are insane. How many hours. So if somebody were to pay me hour to hour to teach them NLP, it just wouldn't be a good use of their time and money. So
I agree.
I get people who ask me that, and I'm like, take my online course, and then if you want to hire me to coach you through that, if you get stuck, then we can do that. But I prefer not to. Oh, I've never done it. I've always refused to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare. It really does for both people.
Yeah, it's like go get a grounding in it first.
Yeah,
go get a grounding in the concepts and try practicing them. And then if you can't make them work, then come to me and we'll sort it out. That's a much better way to do it. But I would say that most of the people I coach, the reason why they come for coaching is they don't really want to take the time to learn NLP. And I understand, like, that some people are just not into it, but they want the benefits of what NLP can do. Mm-hmm. So mainly that's why people come to me for coaching, is they want the benefits without having to take the time to learn it. And like I said, I understand completely. Like, I've had to learn enough, like, social media marketing to bootstrap with my business, but I've gotten to the point where, like, I'm just not that good at it. So I'm going to hire somebody to go and do it. Like, it just doesn't make sense for me to try to master it if I'm not that interested in it. It's necessary, but it's not something that I need to master. I enjoy making content.
Right.
That's what I think I'm best at. So that's what I'm going to put my attention on. I'll just pay somebody to do the other stuff that I'm not that good at, and I don't care.
And there's some geeky person that's out there that loves that stuff.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of, and there's some that you can hire who are really young and don't know anything, but they'll go and figure it out for you. But sometimes that works out too.
Yeah. Genuinely, I appreciate the help. The advice, the talk. It's been great, man. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Well, glad to be on. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Damon. All right, man. Well, good luck with everything. And if I can ever help you in any way, please reach out to me.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
All right.